We all feel the weight of the state of Georgia on our shoulders, but when you look back in February, January, March, April, May, when people are focusing on basketball or baseball, and we're running in the stadium at 6 a.m. And it sucks, and you're kind of like, why do we do this? And the reason is, for when I fumble on the 10-yard line and we give up a touchdown, then we go back and we score 2 straight drives. That's the reason.
These 2 guys that are sitting up here, they're not defined by one game. These guys played great for us all year. They're great competitors. They were great leaders on this team, and they contributed tremendously to the success of this team, and we would not be here without them. All right, and both of them take responsibility for the loss, but both of them contributed in a lot of ways in a positive way to giving us a chance to win and a chance to be here to have an opportunity to win. So I just want to thank them for that and let everybody know how proud I am of these 2 guys.
Welcome in to the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And running a little late, running way late actually, but hey, it's because we got a great show lined up for you. Got a terrific guest, Mike Griffith from the AJC's DawgNation, gonna join the show here in just a bit. Gonna talk some Georgia Bulldogs football, and man, almost didn't get this show out, but so much news coming out. Got this terrific interview lined up. Couldn't go another day without a show. So, hey, let's just get right into the action. And what I wanted to start with, man, we've got a lot of coaching news here in the SEC heading into the weekend. And it starts for me with Kendal Briles making it official. He is returning to the Arkansas Razorbacks. Huge news for Sam Pittman and company, given the overtures by the Miami Hurricanes. And it was first reported by Chris Lowe of ESPN that Briles will be staying at Arkansas. That's just huge news for KJ Jefferson and that offense. Kendal Briles, one of the best offensive coordinators in all of college football. And, of course, right after this was announced, if you missed it, man, there were some shenanigans there on Twitter. It was one of the Dan Le Batard people, I think it was. I guess he's plugged in. I guess Dan Le Batard people are running the Miami search because they seem to know everything that's going on down there with the Hurricanes. But this one guy, I think his name's Mickey Ruiz, something like that, he is just dead set on the fact that Kendal Briles not an option. Nobody wanted him down there. This is all a ploy. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll cut to some of these tweets of this guy basically calling Kendal Briles out, calling Arkansas fans out. He's just madder than hell that Kendal Briles staying at Arkansas. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. And the best was Kendal Briles started responding to the guy. So, I mean, it was terrific. Great theater there on a Thursday. But, moving aside from all the drama, none of that matters. What matters is Kendal Briles staying in Fayetteville for another season of football. And hey, I said this on Twitter. I'm not backing down from it. I'm already getting mocked left and right from non-Arkansas people, but I think this makes it official, man. I think if you're Arkansas, you start a off-season campaign, KJ Jefferson for Heisman. And I'm not sitting here saying, he's a lock, that he's going to win it, but I think he's that caliber of a player. And I'm already starting to hear he can't throw the ball. Traylon Burks gone. Traylon Burks is generational talent, no doubt. They will simply not replace him with one player. I don't think that's possible. But I was hearing KJ Jefferson was garbage this time last year. You know who was saying he wasn't, and it proved that, hey, I knew what I was talking about then. Let's hope for Arkansas fans I know what I'm talking about now, because going into his second year as a starting quarterback, the offensive line looks like it'll be a strength of the team. The running back group is deep as hell. Arkansas just led the SEC in rushing. A good opportunity to do it again. And the schedule, everyone wants to point to this schedule being so daunting. I don't look at it as a mountain to climb. I look at it as an opportunity for the Razorbacks to be on national television for damn near half their football games. And if they thrive in those games, KJ Jefferson, that offense, if they thrive, I mean, we've got to vault him up these rankings. So, it's not, again, I'm not sitting here saying that he's going to win the Heisman or anything like that, but I put him front and center as the face of your program because that's what he is. And if, Arkansas continues their ascension up the SEC ladder, we got to give these players credit for the work they're putting in. And there's not many as dynamic as KJ Jefferson in the SEC. Let's have some fun this offseason. One of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, one of the best quarterbacks in the country returning in Kendal Briles' system. Year 3, going to have weapons all around him. I'm not backing down from this one. KJ Jefferson, one of my favorites for the Heisman Trophy next season. That's basically, I think, what you're getting when you get Kendal Briles' return for another season. I think it's that important to the program there in Fayetteville. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, rough news from the Plains because not yet official. I was kind of waiting this out Thursday night. Nothing official, but being reported by 24/7 Sports, Philip Marshall specifically, that Derek Mason, the defensive coordinator, leaving for Oklahoma State. So Auburn's going to have 2 new coordinators this season, and they hired one guy, Austin Davis. I'm not trying to trash him, but to my knowledge, he's not called any plays quarterback coach in the NFL. And Brian Harsin has also noted that, hey, we're bringing this guy in part to recruit quarterbacks more so than his elite play calling ability. Now, maybe Austin Davis will be terrific. Again, this is more about Derek Mason leaving, who I know some Auburn fans not too thrilled with Derek Mason, kind of some failures to adjust late in the season. I think that's a fair argument to be made, but it's tough to see at this point in the football calendar Auburn being able to upgrade from Derek Mason now that he is leaving for Oklahoma State. And the plan, according to Philip Marshall once again, is to promote Jeff Schmelding to defensive coordinator and going to hire former Florida linebacker coach Christian Robinson, who he is an outstanding recruiter. Robinson was a very, very popular coach down there at Florida. Michigan tried to hire him away last offseason, and Florida managed to keep Robinson. So, hey, you're adding an SEC veteran, an up-and-comer, but you're losing, again, Derek Mason. And you remember when Brian Harsin got hired, how we judged these guys initially as their staffs, hiring Mike Bobo, hiring Derek Mason. It looked to be a coup at the time. Mike Bobo, 1 year removed, fired. Now Derek Mason leaving for Oklahoma State. And I know Oklahoma State had a good year, but I don't know how you see losing a coordinator to a lateral at best. I think it's a step down for Derek Mason going from the Plains to Oklahoma State. It's just not a great look for Auburn. Now, maybe, we're making sure with Brian Harsin, we're getting everybody on the same page because your back's kind of against the wall, as crazy as that sounds, heading into your second year. But it just does not look great down there right now. And I'm not ready to call the guy out and say he's not going to survive. But when you got 9 defensive players in the last month transferring out, certainly seems like Derek Mason, maybe it was known down there he was not going to be returning. We've had guys like J.J. Pegues, not mentioned that yet. He's transferred to Ole Miss. Lee Hunter, he transferred out. He's going to Central Florida. Old Gus, going to reunite with Gus. And Drayshawn Miller, Amarion Harvey, Dre Butler, Nick Curtis, Eric Reed, Daniel Foster Allen, Romelio Height. All these defensive players in the last month have transferred out of Auburn. So it kind of leads me to believe that maybe they saw this coming. And maybe that's given Brian Harsin time to kind of figure out the plan moving forward. But I don't know, it's a perception hit and just a lot of turnover this offseason at Auburn when you're looking at programs like South Carolina, like Tennessee, even Vanderbilt with second-year coaches, with the staff largely remaining the same. You want that continuity. You want to build on what you did year one. And at Auburn, it feels like we're building from scratch, basically, with new quarterback, new coordinators. And, man, I hate to even do this. I'm not a big hot seat guy, but Brian Harsin, he may be sitting on the hottest seat in the SEC, which is unbelievable because here I was a dumbass saying, this guy, we got to give him consideration for Coach of the Year when Auburn was sitting at, I believe, 5-2 with, a little over a month left in the season, and Auburn controlling their destiny in the SEC West. Here we are, fast forward a couple months, and the guy is, his seat's heating up there on the plane. So this is going to be a situation to monitor all off season, but, I think Brian Harsin can turn it around. It's not like he's new to college football or anything like that, but I'm trying to look at this situation and look for a glimmer of hope. And all I'm seeing is we got Tank Bigsby, maybe the best running back in the SEC. Maybe he can carry you to a surprising season next year, but it's going to be tough. So, I'll have my eye on what's going on down there. But needless to say, seeing some red flags down there on the plains this offseason. Now, staying in the SEC West, let's kick down to Oxford. We had some interesting news here late Thursday because it is being reported. If you missed it, I'll throw it up here on the YouTube page. But Kiffin tweeting out photos from Athens. Now, we all know Lane Kiffin, he's a troll. Who knows if, maybe he's trying to throw people off the scent. Who knows when he throws something like this up, what he's really up to. But why is he in Athens, Georgia? According to John Spokaloff of WCBI in Mississippi, Kiffin's down there in Georgia to recruit JT Daniels and Jermaine Burton, who just jumped into the transfer portal to Oxford. And, who knows? They could be, it sounds like JT Daniels and Jermaine Burton, a little bit of a package deal. The two California natives. They really seemed to hit it off when JT Daniels got in the lineup there for Georgia, going all the way back to the 2020 season. One of his favorite targets there was Jermaine Burton, and Burton kind of fell down the pecking order, certainly seemed like with Stetson Bennett as Georgia's starting quarterback. So it makes sense. It makes sense that JT Daniels and Jermaine Burton kind of tied at the hip, so to speak. Now, there's no guarantees they're going to transfer together, but hey, Ole Miss needs receiver help. Certainly need quarterback help, and who better to go play for than old Lane Kiffin. So this will be fascinating. There's the USC ties, there's the California ties. He just turned Matt Corral into one of the top prospects in the country, heading into the upcoming NFL draft. Can he do the same for JT Daniels? I have no doubt that Lane Kiffin could do something like that. Now, as I understand it, I think JT Daniels still has got about a semester or so of classwork if he wants to leave as a graduate, so he can be eligible immediately in Oxford because he's already transferred once. I don't think he can just transfer at a whim. He's got to get his graduate degree before transferring. So not even sure, I may be putting the cart before the horse here, but if JT Daniels does play for Ole Miss next season, I don't know that he can come in for spring football. So that's going to be something to monitor as well. But, hey, I'd love to see JT Daniels and Jermaine Burton stay in the SEC. We talked about Alabama. We talked about LSU being two to watch. If he wants to stick with JT Daniels, Ole Miss, hey, throw in a wild card there. That's basically what Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have been since their time there. They're a wild card, and that's not looking to end anytime soon. Next, let's kick it all down to Tuscaloosa, because interesting news here for the Crimson Tide, where former Miami defensive backs coach Travaris Robinson, of course, a lot of SEC fans know that name. He's been at South Carolina. He's been at Auburn. He's been at Florida. He's been all over the place. He is taking a job on Alabama's staff there to coach cornerbacks, according to Bruce Feldman. And South Carolina fans probably rolling their eyes at that. Hey, you don't want T-Rob as your defensive coordinator. We know that. But he is an outstanding defensive backs coach, despite what we saw there at the end of his career at South Carolina. So I think this is a great pickup for Alabama. It gets you some ties to South Florida, which is where T-Rob was at. Ties all over the SEC, as I just mentioned. I don't see anything wrong with this hire. I think really, really good recruiter. Not that Nick Saban and company need any help recruiting defensive backs. They got that on lockdown. But, hey, maybe this is we see a lot of these fired coaches, and not that T-Rob got fired here or anything, but we see a lot of these coaches go work for Nick Saban, and it revitalized their career. Maybe this will revitalize T-Rob as a defensive coordinator and potentially as a head coach one day working for the greatest college football coach of all time. That's probably in line with his thinking as well. So situation to monitor there for sure. I like this hire. And then here's an potentially even bigger one, because it looks like Ole Miss losing another assistant coach. They've lost their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator, now their special teams coordinator, leaving Oxford for Alabama. Coleman Hutzler, who before he got hired there at Ole Miss was named special teams coordinator of the year by Football Scoop, so a very well-regarded assistant coach among coaching circles here. He's going to be the special teams coordinator, outside linebackers coach for Alabama. They have been searching for about a year for the replacement for Jeff Banks and the pole assassin. Well, they got it here in Coleman Hutzler. So, hey, 2 moves here. Alabama, they move silently, they move quickly, but they have just upgraded their staff here in a matter of a few hours here. And now we're going into spring football with, I think an upgraded Alabama coaching staff. So nice moves there from Nick Saban. Now jumping on down to Columbia, Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, I think he just hired him a quality assistant coach here, because Missouri is expected to hire Blake Baker as the new safeties coach, according to Pete Thamel of ESPN. Blake Baker was formerly the linebackers coach at LSU, very popular coach down there. He coached at Miami for quite a while. I think he was the defensive coordinator at Miami. He and Drinkwitz were on the same staff at Arkansas State in 2013. He's coached at Louisiana Tech as well. He's a Houston native, which being a native of that area is huge for Missouri in recruiting, because you always want to break into the state of Texas as much as possible. So, hey, you're getting a guy that former defensive coordinator experience, a guy with SEC experience. This looks to be another big piece of the puzzle here for Missouri and Steve Wilkes in their defensive backfield. I love this hire by Missouri. Again, these are quiet moves here, these assistant coaching moves. These types of moves go under many people's radar, but just wanted to give a shout out to Missouri, where I think they upgraded their staff by landing one of the more popular coaches from LSU's coaching staff last season. Because LSU had some of the best linebacking play in the SEC this season. Now you're getting the coach that developed those guys in Baton Rouge last season. And the last thing here before we get to our interview with Mike Griffith, got a little bit of good news, bad news for Tennessee, because Isaiah Neyor, the Wyoming transfer, is one of the first times I've seen this, but he commits to Tennessee, keeps getting recruited. He's going to Ole Miss, going to Texas, and then he announced here on Thursday, hell, I'm going to Texas now. So we got a flipped transfer commitment, and that's a tough one for Tennessee. Everyone I talked to, this is the guy that had Tony Basilio on the show, saying he'd probably score a dozen touchdowns based on what he's heard. It's not doom and gloom. I don't think Tennessee fans should care too much. I don't think you even knew who this guy was 2 weeks ago. I know I sure didn't. But now that it's not like he came to Tennessee and said, well, hell, I ain't going here. He just flipped his commitment. He's from Texas, so it makes a little bit of sense. I certainly think I'd rather play for Josh Heupel than Steve Sarkisian, though, based on what we saw last season. But, hey, that's his prerogative. But that's the bad news. The good news is the NCAA, they have made some major changes here this week. They're having some kind of convention in Indianapolis, which is, of course, the headquarters of the NCAA. And they have voted to pass a new constitution. And why this is important for Tennessee? Well, basically what they've decided to do is have the NCAA no longer govern and set penalties. They're going to allow conferences and schools themselves to kind of govern themselves. And the impetus for this is, some of these major college football programs like the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, in years past, they are under the same rules as Division II, Division III. That's basically nonsensical at this point, given how massive that college football has become, given the vast difference between budgets and coaching staffs and roster management. It just doesn't make any sense. So, this is a step towards the NCAA kind of breaking apart here, but I think they're just conceding to the likes of the the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, who don't want to be ruled and governed by the NCAA anymore. So if the schools and the conferences now are the ones monitoring each other, I got to believe NCAA was already pretty toothless. I don't know how they can come down on Tennessee when they aren't even deciding punishment. So that remains to be seen how that's going to work out. But, for any Tennessee fans out there wondering where's an update on the NCAA investigation, it looks like the NCAA may soon not even have the power to do anything. And we know Tennessee has already set some concessions with scholarship limits. No limits on the bowl games. Obviously, they just played in a bowl game. But for any Tennessee fans maybe worried that the NCAA is going to come down and impose a bowl ban, which I have not heard. I'm just saying, in case you're worried about that, it doesn't look like that's going to be happening. I doubt that there's going to be any kind of major sanctions here or anything. And this is a play also, I've been told, to punish people that actually did things like a Jeremy Pruitt, whereas in years past, players could break the rules, and then the NCAA would come along years later and punish the current roster, the current coaching staff. That's all going away. Again, this is all part of the new NCAA Constitution. And, hey, if I'm a Tennessee fan, that's the best news you can get heading into the weekend. All right, so, hey, that's all I got around the SEC. Let's kick it to our interview with Mike Griffith. Very gracious, giving us his time. No one covers the Georgia Bulldogs as well as Mike Griffith of DawgNation. So I'm very, very eager to talk some Georgia football with him. All right, hey, we're pleased to once again be joined by Mike Griffith. Nobody does a better job covering the Georgia Bulldogs than Mike Griffith when he works for the AJC's DawgNation.com. He was the Football Writers Association Beat Writer of the Year for 2018. Mike, thank you so much for joining us once again.
You bet, Michael.
Now, I got to start with this because this is certainly the biggest topic right now in Athens. Stetson Bennett making the decision to return. Thoughts on that? And, I'm not trying to put the cart in front of the horse, but the way I see it, this is going to have to be an offensive-led team next season, potentially, with all the losses on the defensive side of the ball. So is it too unrealistic to say that Stetson should be an off-season Heisman candidate?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure who the starter is going to be. Kirby's a year-to-year, game-to-game type of guy. There's right now, as we sit here in, January, Georgia's been active looking for quarterbacks in the portal. The recruiting never stops. A year ago at this time, we thought JT Daniels was the guy, and he actually emerged from SEC Media Days last summer as the Heisman Trophy favorite, according to odds makers. So things can change fast, and certainly in the Georgia quarterbacks room, things can change fast. There are some very heralded players, that have been behind. One of them was actually ahead of Stetson on the depth chart last year. Carson Beck, a former Mr. Football from Florida, won a state championship down there, and I think Carson Beck will compete this spring. And Brock Vandegrift was a very highly touted 5-star from, right here near Athens, 10 miles away from the school essentially, and flipped from Oklahoma to Georgia, a pretty stocky 6'3", 215 guy with a pretty strong arm and a pretty good ability to run the ball. And then they signed the guy that shattered a lot of the high school records formerly held by Deshaun Watson in Gunnar Stockton, who's coming in as an incoming freshman. So I don't think I'd put any cart ahead of any horse. I don't even know if I'd put a horse ahead of the cart because with Kirby Smart and quarterbacks, you really just never know.
Well, speaking of the quarterbacks, you, Mike, were the one that broke this news when it was official. JT Daniels in the transfer portal, and that was soon followed by receiver Jermaine Burton. What were your thoughts on that duo entering the portal there in a short period of time together?
Well, I don't know if they were, necessarily connected at the time. I think JT just recognized that, as talented as he is and as much as he accomplished in a short amount of time, I just think Kirby Smart's got a different vision for a quarterback. He wants some more mobility, and I think that once JT got hurt, and they switched, I don't think Kirby wanted to readjust the offense, and maybe JT would have won it. I know, I think Kirby made it pretty clear that he wanted him back, but it's just too much of a crapshoot. And yes, there's competition, but it's possible to be. I don't know how to say it, but the results of the competition doesn't always lead to who they choose to start. It could have something to do with the personnel. It could have something to do with just a lot of those. I mean, even Todd Monken, when Todd Monken was talking about it last year, he said, who knows what's behind the next decision? And he's the offensive coordinator. So I just think it's too unpredictable of a situation for JT. And I think, he probably wants to go somewhere where it's a little bit cleaner picture. He'll take his talents elsewhere. Jermaine Burton was a guy just didn't get a lot of targets. I mean, once Georgia shifted out of the 5 wide, 4 wide, pro style air raid stuff that JT was doing and kind of went to the 3 tight end play action, more of a balanced attack in terms of run pass ratio with Stetson, a lot of those receivers lost targets. I mean, Brock Bowers had something like 56 catches, which was about the same. If you look at Brock Bowers' numbers, it was about the same as the number 2 and number 3 wide receivers combined. So receivers really didn't get a lot of throws in this style of offense. There was an occasional shot play, but for the most part, it was a controlled passing game to the tight end and the running backs, high percentage throws, and a lot of run after the catch, which is smart, right? It's what you see in the NFL. And Todd Monken can do it a lot of different ways, and the talent dictated that. And Burton was the guy that was injured so early on, so he kind of fell behind. Like JT, if there's a thread here, Michael, in the Georgia players that you're seeing in the portal, many of them, if not most of them, have been injured at some point. And, if you're injured, what do they say? The best ability is the availability.
Right.
So I don't think that's a coincidence.
Now, in your mind, does winning the national championship, what does that do for Kirby Smart's legacy, the Georgia native, the former Bulldog himself? I mean, is he ever going to have to buy another drink in Athens if he had to already?
Yeah, I don't think he has time to stop and drink, to your point. I every now and then he takes time to smile. I mean, Kirby's pretty restless. Kirby is not a complacent guy. His time management skills are what he's infamous for, and works really hard. These days, in today's society, you'd like to think a national championship would seal a legacy, but, you just take a look around at, LSU had a couple guys win national championships in the last 10 years. They're both out of football, right? Mm-hmm. Things can change fast. And, there's just no guarantees. Things change so quickly. The landscape is shifting. There's a new model now with the NIL, not to derail your question, but, it's almost like there was a formula that was needed under the previous rules to be successful. And now you have one-time transfer in NIL. And now the school that's able to adjust the quickest and the best of that will be successful. So I think it remains to be seen. Georgia's in a great position. They're on the pole position, being the national champion, to take advantage of these rules. And I think that's what it really means, is that it puts Georgia out front. Everybody wants to be a part of a good thing. It's a shot in the arm for recruiting. It's a shot in the arm for fundraising. It's a shot in the arm for, licensing and marketing. It's a shot in the arm for maybe tying yourself to corporations, right? Because to me, that's where I think NIL is going, is corporate sponsorship with a lot of these NIL deals, major corporate sponsorship. Is it realistic to think Georgia could land Delta or Coca-Cola? I don't know. I mean, then what happens? The Alabama people don't want to drink it, but then you got Tennessee, right, with Pilot Gas and Oil. I mean, do Georgia people not pull over because they know every time they're fueling up that Pilot gas stations are owned by the Tennessee booster Jim Haslam? So it's the world ahead. My head starts hurting when I try to think about just how many different things are ahead for college football and how the model is going to have to be reshaped with these NILs and this one-time transfer rule.
Now, for so long, Georgia, and by association, of course, Kirby Smart, couldn't get over Alabama, couldn't beat Nick Saban. Now that they've done it, and of course they've done it on the biggest stage, do you consider Georgia an equal to Alabama, or did you already see it that way?
Well, I mean, a lot of people couldn't get by Alabama, right? I mean, The fact that Georgia got there every year was pretty good. Well, not every year, but 4 out of 5 years for Kirby, his first 4 out of 5 years. And Listen, Alabama's probably the national championship favorite going into next year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anything changes. I guess there was a stigma there when Nick won his first 24 in a row against former assistants, and then Jimbo beat him, and now Kirby's beat him. But guess what? They lost 6 first-round picks. I mean, at some point, Alabama's got to reload, you think. So we'll see what happens this next year. I mean, right now, I'd take Alabama over the field for the national championship with what they've got coming back and what I saw from Bryce Young. He was unbelievable.
Now, what do you think the plan will be for defensive coordinator with Dan Lanning, of course, going off, taking the Oregon job? Where does Kirby Smart turn? I know he's got some great in-house candidates. Do you think that's where he'll go with his next defensive coordinator hire?
Well, so far it's Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann. I don't have any reason to believe that it'll change. Muschamp's obviously a proven commodity as a coordinator, certainly, and had some success as a head coach. But all that experience it's awesome for Kirby. I think Will Muschamp was a big part of last season's national championship. I mean, you add another veteran voice to the room, and with all the work that Georgia needed in its secondary, it was in a major reload in the secondary, and Will Muschamp was there along with Kirby to get those guys more individual attention. Jamal Adai, the secondary coach, I mean, they had to catch up fast. I mean, they lost like 8 guys from their secondary from the year before, and obviously you saw in the end the secondary came through with Keely Ringo. But I think it's going to stay the way it is, with Schumann and Muschamp being named the co-defensive coordinators. I think that Schumann's kind of a rising star, much like Dan Lanning was a few years ago when he took over the defense after Mel Tucker left in 2019. And, in 3 seasons, Dan, parlayed that into the head coaching job at Oregon. And, you look at how Mel Tucker's doing now at Michigan State, and you look at another former Kirby assistant, Sam Pittman, over there at Arkansas, and Shane Beamer, the success he had. These are all guys that have come through Georgia. I mean, that's not too shabby. We're talking about 4 former Kirby Smart assistants. Now, granted, that wasn't their only stop, but, for Georgia to have that association, I think that's a positive thing. I think it makes Georgia an attractive place to work. And Will Muschamp, I don't know if he wants another go around as a head coach or not. I think he likes the time he's having with his family. Although, he's got a commitment as an assistant defensive coordinator there, co-defensive coordinator. So I feel like that position is pretty solidified. I'm more curious, what happens on offense with Cortez Hankton going to LSU, and how might they fit that gap? Who might they promote? Could they hire a true quarterbacks coach that actually, on field? I know Buster Faulkner is a guy that's been out on the road recruiting, and he was kind of an offensive analyst role they hired from his previous position as a Southern Miss offense coordinator. Might he be promoted to an on-field, full all-time on-field assistant? Maybe let Monken oversee the receivers. Monken's kind of a receiver guru. Or will they bring in somebody new? So Kirby likes to slow play these things. He's pretty thorough when it comes to his hires. And right now, I think the priority is on the recruiting trail.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's perfect for my last question for you, Mike. I really appreciate all your time. I keep hearing Arch Manning really loves Georgia, and I know, no one can predict where these recruiting battles are going to go, but can you share anything at all with the recruitment with Arch Manning and how Georgia's looking as a potential landing spot for the quarterback that everybody's going to have their eye on all summer?
Yeah, it's really, to me, fascinating. Probably one of the most high-profile recruits, and man, quite some time. I can't even think. The Manning name travels, and a lot of people have been waiting on Arch for a long time at a lot of schools. A lot of time and money has been invested into his recruitment by many places. I did see earlier this week Kirby and Matt Luke and Todd Monken. At least those 3 were at his basketball game, and that's a lot of manpower hours at a critical time of the year. So that says a lot. I don't think Kirby hadn't made any secret of it that he really wants to land Arch Manning. Kirby really has a passion for recruiting. It makes you wonder a little bit about the quarterback picture now, right? I mean, if you're a redshirt freshman or an incoming freshman or a true freshman at Georgia, and you haven't had a chance to start yet, if you're Vandegrift, back Stockton, and Arch Manning comes in, what does that mean for you, right? How big does the transfer portal get busy again, and what promises have to be made to land Arch Manning, or do any? I have a hard time believing that the Mannings, just with my experience with knowing how calculated Peyton is and thorough he is, there's going to be a plan for him wherever he goes, whether it's to redshirt a year and play. But the Mannings will be very, very, very involved in this. And I think Todd Monken does have a background with Peyton, so that makes sense. I just wonder about, and I call it collateral damage because, that's just where we're at with one-time transfers and high-profile recruits and NIL deals. If a school is going to, or if a player is going to have an arranged NIL deal and be receiving a certain amount of money, there's going to be an expectation for him to play. And it gets complicated. Or if you promise a recruit an opportunity, that affects the guy that's already there. And, it's not just at Georgia. This is happening everywhere. This is not unique to Georgia or Alabama. It's just those two schools are the tip of the spear, and so they're in the focal point. They're where the bright lights get shined, right? You're having me on because I cover the national championship team, and how do things look here? Well, you could call 13 other guys that cover SEC teams, and the names and the faces may change, but the story remains the same. This is what's happening. This is what the current rule structure, the current rule structure, which is kind of an oxymoron, this is what it's producing. It's like Bill O'Brien said, in one of his press conferences leading up to the championship game. It's kind of like free agency only without any rules. So, that's why Nick Saban wants to see some legislation. It's why Greg Sankey and presidents and athletic directors are going to be talking about this. Because right now, Michael, it is the wild, wild west out there, and it's hard to predict or project anything.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. He's Mike Griffith, AJC DawgNation. Got to check it out. The Football Writers Association Beat Writer of the Year, named in January 2018. Mike, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
All right, appreciate it, Michael.
All right, so just want to say thanks again to Mike for hopping on the line, talking some Georgia Bulldogs football. That was some terrific stuff and a great way to head into the weekend. So just want to say thanks once again to Mike, and don't forget to give him a follow at Mike Griffith 32 and check out all his work at DawgNation.com. But that's going to do it. Sorry for the delay on this episode. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you on the next one.